I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair, we do have a quorum. Participating in the meeting today are yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, and Commissioners Rouse, Conklin, and Higgins, and Commissioner Higgins will be voting today.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Mr. Braxton. Mr. Braxton?
Thank you, Chair Hart. May is National Water Safety Month. The National Safety Council and the Consumer Product Safety Commission are encouraging everyone to keep water safety top of mind. While drowning deaths are the leading cause of death for 1 to 4-year-olds, drownings continue to be the second leading cause of preventable deaths through age 15. According to the National Safety Council research, 676 people ages 5 to 24 drowned in 2022. Swimmers should keep a few safety precautions in mind. Don't go in the water unless you know how to swim. Swim lessons are available for all ages. Never swim alone. Learn CPR and rescue techniques. Make sure the body of water matches your skill level. Swimming in a pool is much different than swimming in a lake or river, where more strength is needed to handle currents. If you do get caught in a current, don't try to fight it. Stay calm and float with it, or swim parallel to the shore until you can swim free. Swim in areas supervised by a lifeguard. Don't push or jump on others. Don't dive in unfamiliar areas. Never drink alcohol when swimming. Alcohol is involved in about half of all male teen drownings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move on to the minutes from our last meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke was not able to join us today, so I will seek approval of the minutes. The minutes of the meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I will move approval of the March 4th, 2025 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Chair, April 8th. Sorry, just a correction. The date should have been April 8th. I apologize.
I'm sorry, April 8th. Okay, thank you for the correction. Is there a second? I move, and is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lobby. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is 5 yeas and 0 nays, so the minutes are adopted as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Next item on the agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those of you who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Miner, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, there are no names in the chat.
Thank you, Ms. Miner. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. I thank the WMSC staff for this effective oversight work, and I thank Metro Rail for its efforts to comply with its safety requirements that it has developed to provide for the safety of Metro Rail riders and workers. Later in this meeting, we will discuss updates on other oversight activities, including those related to audits, inspections, investigations, and oversight of Metro Rail's safety certification. We will also review and discuss the proposed WMSC fiscal year 2026 work plan and budget. Next item on the agenda, Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Thank you. Yes, Chair Hart, I do have some updates. At the last public meeting, excuse me, at the last public meeting, I mentioned that we informed Metro Rail in early April that we could not concur that Metro Rail's safety certification process adequately identified and mitigated the station overrun hazards seen on the red line. And until it does, ATO may not be used for passenger service on any other rail line. Since that public meeting, the WMSC and WMATA engaged in several discussions regarding alternate paths to safely expanding ATO to the rest of the Metro Rail system. Also, the WMSC and Metro Rail participated in another workshop, the fourth in a series of ATO workshops, to collaboratively discuss how to move forward safely on ATO activation. As it has in the past workshops, Metro Rail hosted this fourth in-person workshop, and I do want to pass along my thanks to Metro for doing that, not just hosting and providing the space, but more importantly, all of the work that goes into preparing for such an event. Based on the discussion between the WMSC and Metro Rail, the WMSC understands that Metro Rail will be providing items that the WMSC has required to demonstrate that it's accomplished the necessary mitigations so that we can evaluate the green and yellow lines for ATO activation. And we, of course, look forward to receiving that information. Excuse me. During his remarks later in the meeting, Mr. Paul Smith will provide more details about our communications with Metro Rail and the next steps in our oversight of Metro Rail's expansion of ATO. Moving on to another topic, last week, 13 WMSC staff members, as well as Commissioner Conklin, attended the FTA's annual workshop for state safety oversight and rail transit agencies. The FTA's primary focus on this workshop was providing implementation guidance on the requirements of their roadway worker safety protection regulation that was issued in December of 2024. The regulation establishes minimum safety standards to prevent safety events, fatalities, and injuries to transit workers who access the transit rail roadway in the performance of their duties. The regulation also requires state safety oversight agencies to evaluate rail transit agencies' RWP programs for approval. Our role is to review Metro Rail's RWP program, to approve it when it meets the regulatory criteria, and to oversee and enforce the implementation of the approved program. In September of last year, in anticipation of the FTA's RWP regulation, we issued an order to WMATA providing requirements to Metro Rail regarding its roadway worker protection program. And over the last 2 months, we provided feedback and guidance, including pointing out the components needed from Metro Rail for the WMSC to begin our review. These needed components include a separate roadway worker protection manual, a risk-based roadway worker protection rules compliance program, and a training and qualification program that prepares workers for accessing the roadway. While many members of the state safety oversight community were at the National Capital Region last week attending the FTA workshop, the WMSC hosted an annual membership meeting of TSOA, or the Transit Safety Oversight Association. That's the national professional association that we've helped to create to serve safety professionals in the transit safety oversight field. The TSOA meeting drew more than 40 state safety oversight professionals to our office space to learn about TSOA, its activities, and to exchange ideas and best practices. Finally, Chair Hart, as you mentioned in today's meeting, we'll be presenting the proposed WMSC fiscal year 2026 budget and work plan, and I'm proud of the WMSC's team's continued safety oversight work, and your approval of this important item will enable us to continue our safety oversight work. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I see no hands, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is in the process of completing our second triennial cycle of safety audit. In June, we will begin commencing our third triennial cycle of safety audits. Each of these audits we conduct are aimed at examining Metro Rail's compliance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and associated safety commitments and requirements that are in place to maintain the necessary level of safety. There are several WMSC triennial audits at varying stages of completion. The first such audit is the Control Center Rail Operations Audit, following the initial exit conference conducted with key Metro Rail personnel in January, the WMSC team received additional information, conducted additional interviews, and then based upon this, preliminary findings and recommendations were revised and presented to Metro Rail in a second exit conference on April 21st. The WMSC anticipates issuing the draft report to Metro Rail for review this month. Turning to the audit of Metro Rail's elevators and escalators program, the WMSC held an exit conference with Metro Rail on March 28th to review the audit and our preliminary findings. Metro Rail provided additional information for review on April 4th. The audit team reviewed the additional information provided and are continuing to prepare the draft report for Metro Rail's review. The third audit we are currently working on is our audit of Metro Rail's communication systems. We have completed the initial interviews and observations for this audit and have a few more to complete later this week. We will be holding an exit conference with Metro Rail towards the end of this month. The last audit to discuss is the upcoming audit of Metro Rail's track and structures. This is the first audit of the WMSC's third triennial audit cycle. Our notification of this audit and our initial document requests were sent to Metro Rail on April 30th. We expect to receive documentation on May 30th and conduct interviews and observations in June. The audit objectives of the track instructors audit include the assessment of both Metro Rail track instructors' inspections, maintenance, engineering practices, and procedures. As we do with all audits, we will also evaluate the associated training for the purposes of compliance with applicable plans, policies, regulations, and industry best practices. This audit will also include the annual audit of Metro Rail's compliance with its roadway worker protection program required by the Rail Transit Roadway Worker Protection Regulation 49 CFR Part 671, published on October 31st, 2024. Earlier, Dr. Meyer mentioned that this regulation calls for the WMSC to review and approve the Metro Rail Roadway Worker Protection Program, and it also requires the WMSC to oversee and enforce Metro Rail's implementation of its roadway worker protection program. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
I see. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Commissioner Conklin, please.
I know the report mentioned some of the delays in these audits, and I'm just curious whether there's any update on when we might expect activity to start again.
I mean, we're currently ongoing with our communication systems audit, and like I said, that the draft report for the control center, it took some revisions after that second exit conference. We're still kind of working through that. That should be issued in very shortly here after this meeting, and then the elevator and escalator will follow, and then a communication system, as I said, is ongoing. We have another interviews and observations tomorrow and Thursday for that audit, and then we'll get into track and structures after that.
So they're proceeding as you would expect
Yeah.
with normal interaction. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions from the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell? Thank you for that question, Commissioner Conklin. We will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Ms. Rhodes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metro Rail currently has 81 open caps. There are an additional 5 emergency management and life safety audit caps in development. Metro Rail submitted the latest revisions of these draft caps for review on May 1st. The WMSC is currently reviewing these latest revisions and will provide feedback to Metro Rail by Thursday, May 15th, in accordance with program standard defined deadlines. In addition to developing these new caps, as part of Metro Rail's implementation of open corrective action plans, we receive weekly scheduled submissions of actionable items or milestones that Metro Rail has completed. Since the last public meeting, Metro Rail has submitted 41 routine deliverables associated with open corrective action plans for WMSC review. Some examples of the deliverables received include an implementation report on SMS compliance for ongoing rail operations cap C0182, 3 months of communications systems form quality checks for communication systems CAP C0214, a current state assessment of water intrusion and list of planned actions in response for communications CAP C0222, documentation of safety risk coordinator training completion for roadway maintenance machines program CAP C0250, and a quarterly report of documented additions to identified safety critical items for C0262, which is a CAP created in response to the NTSB's investigation into the October 2021 derailment near Roslyn Station. I will now turn to another set of milestones. Since our last public meeting, 3 WMSC CAPs have been closed. Each CAP that is closed is a fully implemented safety correction or improvement. These are CAPs C0134, C0212, and C0239. I will walk through each of these CAPs. CAP C0134 addressed a finding from our 2021 revenue vehicle audit. The finding identified that Metrorail's 6000 series rehabilitation program, including coupler overhaul work, was implemented without appropriate safety certification and approvals required by WMATA's Safety and Security Certification Program Plan. To address this, Metrorail revised its 6000 series Scheduled Maintenance Program, or SMP, Certified Items List, SIL, and received Safety Certification Review Committee approval. Metrorail then updated its Safety and Security Certification Training Program materials and provided corresponding training to over 300 applicable personnel. In closing this CAP, Metrorail submitted the Certificates of Compliance for 6000 series SMP and coupler changeout project for all 182 6000 series cars as evidence of implementation of the safety certification process. CAP C0212 was a corrective action plan developed based upon the WMSC's May 17, 2022 order on Metrorail's improper power restoration, which resulted from ongoing WMSC monitoring of recorded systems and investigations, which found that Metrorail was putting its personnel at risk of serious injury or death by repeatedly bypassing safety redundancies in power restoration procedures that Metrorail has deliberately designed for the safety of its employees, contractors, and first responders. To address this CAP, Metrorail instituted both short-term and long-term mitigations to address immediate hazards while creating an improved system to address power energization, including retraining roadway workers in charge in conducting work safely in the vicinity of third rail power infrastructure, staffing the power desk adequately, gradually increasing the number of overnight work locations requiring power management as other criteria were met, and safety certification of the power desk activities at the new Metrorail Control Center. Due to the scale and breadth of effort on behalf of both the WMSC and WMATA in implementing this CAP, we will go through this CAP in greater detail in a future public meeting. Cap C0239 addressed a finding from our 2023 structures audit. This finding demonstrated that Metro Rail's Structures, Maintenance, and Inspections Department had not formalized and documented its on-the-job training process for structural inspection. To address this finding, Metro Rail developed a formalized and documented process for the on-the-job training of structural evaluation technicians, including newly defining the standards, curricula, selection criteria, and training requirements and record-keeping processes for those serving as OJT training mentors. Evidence of this newly defined training being provided to current personnel, including OJT mentors and new hire technicians, was provided to the WMSC as proof of implementation of this new program. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Rhodes?
I'll see no hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silva. Seeing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process. Paul Smith, WMSC Director of Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Hart. As part of the WMSC safety certification oversight, the WMSC continues to conduct its oversight of Metro Rail's activation of ATO. The WMSC team and the Metro Rail project team met most recently on April 28th, 2025, in person at an ATO workshop, the fourth such in-person meeting we have been invited to by WMATA. The Metro Rail team included the Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, the Senior Vice President for Communications and Signal Infrastructure, Chief of Operations, the Chief of Fleets, the Director of Training, and their respective staffs. Continuing with past practice, there was productive dialogue between the WMSC and the Metro Rail team at this workshop. Metro Rail provided details of a multi-layered ATO governance body that has been put in place to provide the needed day-to-day expertise as well as executive-level oversight and resource mobilization to identify station overrun causes, possible mitigations, and the implementation and evaluation of these mitigations. As Metro Rail plans to expand ATO to the rest of the rail system, there was also information provided that WMSC was already aware of based on our ongoing oversight of Metro Rail, such as roadway worker protection scenarios in ATO and temporary control plans to provide additional mitigations to control station overruns, such as at Rockville Station. WMATA also shared up-to-date insights on the anomalous signal issue that is affecting station stopping at Judiciary Square and likely next steps to mitigate the Judiciary Square station overrun causes. The WMSC team has continued to meet with the Metro Rail team at least once each week to share incremental and new feedback, share insights, and hear about progress on Metro Rail's safety certification of ATO activation. My counterpart, the Metro Rail Senior Vice President for Communications and Signals, and I continued to routinely have transparent and candid discussions focused on finding solutions to ATO safety issues. As I have briefed the commissioners at the last two public meetings, the WMSC's focus with regard to this project has been twofold. The two areas are to assess if the safety mitigations for Redline ATO are having their intended effect and using our own lessons learned from overseeing the safety certification of Redline ATO to inform our continuing in-depth review of Metro Rail's system-wide ATO activation efforts. As you know, as soon as ATO was activated on the Red Line, there was a large number of station overruns. There are safety consequences of station overruns, including the possibility of roadway workers being struck by a train. For the past 5 months, which is how long ATO has been activated on the Red Line, the WMSC has expressed to Metro Rail that it must understand the location-specific and global causes of these station overruns and find sound engineering and other mitigations for them. The WMSC has asked Metrorail to provide evidence of several items which they have identified as actions they were undertaking to mitigate station overruns on the Red Line. These include evidence that the cancel station stop button on the rail vehicles have been disabled, or a performance schedule to do so, along with the governing procedures for accomplishing this change. A schedule to verify that the normalization procedure software update is in place on the 7000 series rail cars, and that Metrorail is ready to conduct a system-wide rules compliance program to ensure train operators, rail traffic controllers, and roadway workers are complying with the necessary rules and procedures. Evidence that Metrorail has either reinstated the necessary mitigations to keep roadway workers safe during ATO operations based on its own hazard identification at the start of the ATO project, and the codification of the ATO Governance Committee and its operations. The WMSC has also required that WMATA submit a detailed analysis produced by the ATO Governance Committee of the station overrun events that occurred during the ATO activation. Such analysis verifies that the systemic issues are identified and addressed, and that safety remains the top priority throughout the transition to ATO. This requirement also ensures that WMATA identifies and corrects potential design, operational, or environmental issues contributing to overruns, and provides Metrorail and the WMSC with the information necessary to make an informed, safety-focused decision about ATO safety performance. Once we are in receipt of these items at the necessary stages of this project, both of our organizations will have the information needed to consider the use of ATO on other Metrorail lines. Our investigations team and the Metrorail safety investigators continue to conduct investigative interviews of each of the train operators involved in each of these ATO station overruns on the Red Line. As the Rail Transit Agency, these interviews present a wealth of data to Metrorail and an opportunity for it to take these lessons learned and incorporate them into formally updating the training, materials, and familiarization activities. Moving on to other projects that have been identified for WMSC's in-depth review, I have reported in past meetings the WMSC has designated the 8000 series rail cars for safety certification and have asked for access to the railcar planning documents so that the WMSC may provide safety input at the earliest points possible. Metrorail has said that it will provide the preliminary design documents once it is complete. The WMSC trusts that if there are outstanding safety considerations, Metro will not assert at the time that the time has passed for changes to be made to the design. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Commissioner Conklin, please.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, could you talk a little bit more about the potential safety consequences of the station overruns?
Yeah, from our perspective, Commissioner Conklin, the safety concern is that roadway workers work up to that station platform, sometimes right up to where the AMF or the advanced flagger is located at the 8-car marker. And if a train they're expecting to stop at that station is in ATO and happens to overrun that station, those roadway workers could be in harm's way.
So are those roadway workers there in an authorized capacity, or there are work rules that allow them to be in that space?
Their work rules do allow them to work right up to that AMF position. But our concern is also, I mean, maybe twofold there, that sometimes roadway workers will, take shortcuts in their work and violate their roadway worker rules as well.
And so the concern is that they might expect, under normal conditions, the train to stop at the platform, as most everybody does for most trains, but not all. Because I guess sometimes there are trains that run through a station without stopping for various reasons, right? Under normal operation. So that expectancy would be lost. Is that, in addition to any other protections that might be in place, it's really the expectancy that you're concerned about?
That's correct.
Okay. So are there any other significant safety issues that we have a concern with the overruns? It's obviously not desirable and it's obviously an inconvenience, but I'm just curious about the gamut of safety impacts from this overrun condition.
I mean, I think from a passenger safety perspective, there might be some considerations too for passengers that are expecting the train to stop and it doesn't stop at the right spot. Maybe they're, expecting to get off at that station. We realize that Metro Rail has an SOP when they overrun the station that they don't service that platform, they don't service that station, they continue to the next one, but passengers may not be as familiar with that procedure, and so they may be expecting the doors to open, the train to stop. Maybe they're preparing to exit the train, and the train continues to accelerate through the platform.
But given Metro Rail's current practices here, we don't have a situation where somebody might say we need to back the train up against the direction of travel or manage a door opening in an unusual situation that people have to figure out on the fly. It's really just a expectancy issue for the passengers, but the principal concern is roadway worker protection in that zone past the platform end where the train isn't expected to be, but may be. But in that condition, that's not beyond a red signal, right? That's just a missing a point of service point rather than a control point, right?
That's correct. In most areas of the system, they wouldn't be able to come into that platform with the red signal there.
And we haven't seen any red signal overruns still with this under the ATO being in force. So there have been red signal overruns, but under manual conditions. We haven't seen them in this.
That's correct. There's been no evidence that we've seen presented that an ATO train has overrun a red signal. That's correct.
So I assume in your meetings with Metro Rail, there's been some discussion of how to mitigate this roadway worker protection concern. I mean, it wouldn't alleviate the service-related impact of an overrun, but it would alleviate that principal safety concern. I assume there's been some ideas floated from you and perhaps Metro Rail, more importantly from Metro Rail, about how that condition could be mitigated.
We've had dialogue on that topic. I think we're still awaiting more information from Metro Rail. We'd like them to give us their ideas on how they mitigate that safety concern.
I had only one other question, and is to what extent do you think roadway workers might be in that zone under permitted conditions versus to what extent is your concern about the shortcut, expecting the train to stop, therefore I have a window to do something quickly? Is it mostly the former or is it mostly the latter?
I think it's the former more than I think they are working in that close proximity to the station on a regular basis, and that is my concern.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
And Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Lobby.
Yes, this is a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Conklin, for bringing it up. I'm interested in the role of the Advanced Mobile Flagger. The Advanced Mobile Flagger has been a key safety factor in preventing roadway workers, but it requires that the train stop at the end of the platform and that there's a conversation between the Advanced Mobile Flagger and the operator. If a train doesn't stop at a platform or overruns a platform, how is that communication accomplished?
I may have to rely on some of my colleagues for kind of the operational consideration of how that's handled. I believe if the train doesn't, this is my understanding now, if the train goes past the AMF, at the time the AMF is to radio the watchman or the lookout and let them know that the train has passed their location. I think they're supposed to declare an emergency at that time. But again, I'll have to rely a little bit on some of my colleagues if Bruce Walker or Adam
Sure, Mr. Smith, I will jump in. So Vice Chair Lobby, if the train does not stop at the Advanced Flagger, Mr. Smith is correct. They are provided as part of their safety equipment a radio. They will go over the radio with an emergency. They will reach out to the crew, have the crew clear. Central Control will then ask the train to stop and identify what happened. So there is a procedure in place should they not stop.
Well, I understand that if you do have a station overrun, that the train proceeds to the next station. And I'm a little bit concerned with the timing, the time it takes to use the radio to make the declarations and to basically provide warning to the operator of people in the tunnel, because that to me also seems to be a very important aspect of safety with these station overruns. Not just individuals who may be located right at the end of the station working, but without warning from an advanced mobile flagger at the end of the station platform, at least for the time it takes to get the communication out and to contact the operator, those roadway workers are at great risk. And I think that's a concern that needs to be covered also.
Understood.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair Levy.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for the presentation, and thanks to the commissioners for their questions. Now we will move on to safety event investigations. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of them. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation on that report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. For your consideration and adoption today, we have one employee injury event, 2 events where train operators were removed from service, one for loss of communication and the other for a violation of Metro Rail's electronic device use policy. And then we have 6 red signal overrun events. Investigation Whiskey 0368 relates to an employee injury. On Friday, March 8th, 2024, an automatic train control maintenance mechanic sustained serious injuries to the right hand while conducting routine switch maintenance at switch 315 in West Falls Church Rail Yard. The injury resulted in permanent disfigurement to 2 fingers. At the time of the event or incident, a 4-person ATC crew was performing a preventive maintenance inspection in conjunction with switch tie replacements, operating under local signal control, a method providing them control over nearby signals and switches for safety. During the operation, one ATC crew member was assigned to the tower and requested the interlocking operator to demonstrate how to route a switch. At approximately 8:39 a.m., the interlocking operator activated switch 315 precisely when maintenance activities were underway. At that moment, an ATC crew member was adjusting the crib heater and had their right hand was pinned between the switch point and the running rail, severely injuring their index and middle fingers. The crew immediately attempted to assist the injured worker and notified the tower and ATC supervisor. However, significant delays occurred when attempting to request medical assistance. There was miscommunication between the interlocking operator and personnel in the control center, leading control center personnel to believe medical assistance had been dispatched. The interlocking operator faced difficulty contacting emergency services due to phone system limitations, resulting in emergency services not being dispatched until approximately 9:04 a.m. Over 30 minutes after the initial injury occurred, the ATC mechanic was transported by fire department to a local hospital for further medical treatment. The investigation identified several critical failures contributing to the event. The RIC failed to mechanically and electronically isolate switch 315 before maintenance commenced. The interlocking operator did not communicate with ATC personnel to ensure the area was clear before operating the switch. The ATC crew member in the tower had not been trained on the digital interlocking control board. In response to the incident, Metro Rail implemented several corrective actions, including issuing lessons learned to personnel in the rail transportation and automatic train control maintenance departments, providing comprehensive familiarization training on digital interlocking control panels for all ATC personnel, and reinforcing procedure requirements that all switches must be electronically and mechanically isolated before maintenance activities begin. Additionally, control center personnel are now required to request medical assistance for safety events in rail yards. These measures are intended to strengthen communication, oversight, and procedural compliance to prevent reoccurrence of similar incidents. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this event for Mr. Quigley?
Vice Chair Lobby's raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair Lowry, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. This is a tragic, accident with an individual getting his fingers crushed in a switch between switch points and the rail. And we've talked a little bit about prevention of this type of incident in the future, but I'm a bit concerned about the 24 minutes delay it took for Metro Rail to actually call and have a ambulance dispatched to the scene of the accident. And I'd like to know, has Metro Rail addressed this particular issue? I mean, 24 minutes is a lifetime when you're in pain and have a medical emergency. 24 minutes seems very, very long, and I'm wondering how they're responding to this particular aspect of this accident.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the control center personnel are now required to request medical assistance. So when they get the report of the injury, they go ahead and dispatch emergency services to emergency personnel to that rail yard, rail facility, wherever that might be.
And how is that information put out? Does everybody know to do that now, or are we going to see the same type of issue, next month or next year or whatever?
I hope not, sir, but it has been communicated through the lessons learned and through safety briefings for the control center. There's always been somewhat of a procedure where things need to be reported to the control center, so that does happen. Now they've just taken it that extra step where once it's reported, that the control center follows up and calls emergency personnel and has them dispatched.
So we're satisfied with the response on this particular item?
Yes. Yes, with the phones, and especially with the retraining of all ATC personnel for these new digital boards. So there was a time where Metro had the old punch board system in these interlocking towers, and then over time they've upgraded to digital boards, and we found that not everybody was getting the correct training or training at all. So that's I think a big contributing factor to this event was the individual in the interlocking tower did not know how to use the board or how to protect his colleagues out in the field.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Conklin, please.
Mr. Quigley, is there something uniquely complex about the telephone setup in this tower, or is there not one? I mean, I will admit that I have a phone on my desk that I haven't touched now in 4 years because we're always using either electronic media like this or cell phone. So is there something particularly unusual about the telephone setup that you can't easily make an outgoing call to 911? Or is there other on-site management that you could have contacted in this instance? It seems odd that you would call across the region on radio and somebody else call 911 for a local response. But I'm just curious if you could talk about that a little bit to the extent you're familiar.
Yeah, from my understanding is you just basically have to hit a number. I believe it's 9 to dial out. So this interlocking operator was not aware of that, contacted another colleague at another tower, kind of expressing frustration, and they were just told to call the control center back and have them dispatch 911.
Is there a shop superintendent or something?
There's plenty of people around, other people
Okay.
that could have assisted, yes.
And a cell phone, I understand the prohibition on cell phones across many aspects of the agency, and it makes perfect sense. Is that cell phone use prohibited in this?
Well, I mean, all cell phone use is prohibited, while they're on duty, unless it's, an emergency. So again, I feel like this would have been an emergency phone call.
But you may not bring your cell phone to
No,
avoid.
you probably don't. I
Yeah.
would say they shouldn't be having their phone up in the tower with them. But
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conklin. Are there any further questions?
I see no further hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, the next reports are Ms. Keyrose. Ms. Keyrose, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0369 relates to a Metrorail rule violation. On Thursday, April 11th, 2024, a Metrorail Office of Safety Oversight Specialist conducting compliance checks reported to the operations manager in the control center their suspicion that a train operator was using a cell phone while operating Revenue Train 410 after departing Braddock Road Station on track 2. The specialist heard two distinct voices from the operator's cab, but noted that the train operator was alone. The operations manager informed the radio rail traffic controller, who attempted to coordinate a rail supervisor stationed at Braddock Road to intercept and remove the train operator from service. However, heavy radio traffic resulted in confusion and delayed coordination efforts. Consequently, train 410 departed Braddock Road Station without the rail supervisor successfully boarding. Review of CCTV footage confirmed the train operator using a concealed cell phone while operating the train, and the terminal supervisor at Franconia Springfield Station removed the train operator from service upon arrival. The train operator was relieved of duty and escorted for post-incident toxicology testing. However, the required toxicology testing was not administered due to an error on the post-incident form completed by the escorting rail supervisor. The investigation determined that the train operator violated Metrorail's electronic device policy, resulting in the termination of the train operator's employment. Following this event, Metrorail has reinforced procedures and provided additional training to personnel on electronic device policies and protocols for post-incident toxicology testing. Additionally, Metrorail has initiated the installation of inward and outward-facing audio and video recording devices in all train operating compartments, scheduled for completion in 2028 to enhance oversight and compliance with operating procedures. I can pause on that one if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Key Rose?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah, Ms. Kiro, I'm interested in this particular incident because in reading the Washington Metro Rail summary of this accident, it starts at 11:10 hours. 11:10 when radio RTC attempted to contact an Office of Rail Transportation rail supervisor who was supposed to intercept the train. The supervisor didn't make it, and the train departed at 11:13 hours. And then the next paragraph says at 11:15 hours, this is just a couple minutes later, the train operator was observed manipulating a cellular phone while operating the train. Who observed the operator manipulating this cell phone?
There was a safety specialist on board doing audits. So they board trains regularly and audit the train operators.
So is this the same individual who reported that he suspected that he was using the phone?
That's correct.
And then he actually observed him using the phone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that explains it. I was a bit confused because reading the summary, I had assumed that Metrorail had some way of using the video cameras in real time to observe the operator, but it sounds like the onboard auditor was the one that actually observed him using the phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for the question. Any further questions for Ms. Key Rose?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, please continue, Ms. Key Rose.
Investigation Whiskey 0370 relates to a train operator who was removed from service after the train operator did not respond to or attempt to communicate the control center for 29 minutes while stopped at signal Alpha 0802 near Friendship Heights Station. On May 9th, 2024, while en route to Brentwood Yard, train ID 700 came to a stop at red signal Alpha 0802 near Friendship Heights Station due to a roadway maintenance machine crossing ahead. From 4:39 a.m. to 5:08 a.m., the rail traffic controller in the control center repeatedly attempted and failed to establish radio communication with the train operator aboard the train. The rail traffic controller also instructed nearby trains to sound their horns to gain the operator's attention. Approximately 20 minutes into the communication loss, a rail transportation supervisor was dispatched to physically check on the operator. Upon reaching and boarding train 700, the supervisor found the operator, who stated they were unaware the RTC had been trying to contact them and had been simply waiting for further instructions. The rail traffic controller instructed the rail supervisor to remove the train operator from service. The original train operator was removed for post-incident evaluation and toxicology testing. Investigative review revealed that the operator had failed to use alternate communication methods such as emergency trip station phone as required by Metrorail procedures when radio communication fails. It was determined that radio infrastructure issues initially prevented effective communication, prompting Metrorail's Radio Communications Department to conduct a comprehensive realignment of the radio system to address these failures. The duration of the event was prolonged because the operator did not seek and use alternate communications means. The operator was removed from service for suspicion of fatigue, and subsequent analysis indicated that they may have been experiencing some effects of fatigue, but there is no evidence that fatigue was related to the loss of communication. To address the safety event, Metrorail implemented corrective actions, including reinforcing the importance of using alternate communication methods during radio outages. Additionally, Metrorail continues to work on broader corrective actions related to improving compliance with operational procedures. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Quitos. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding any of these events?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair, please.
Yeah, another short question. How would the operator know that the radio system wasn't working? This occurred in 3 a.m. or in the middle of the night, right? And how would he know that the communication's not working? I would assume that there's not a lot of traffic at that time of night.
So it was early in the morning. They were coming out as the first train in the morning. And the train operator was instructed to stop at the red signal, but then the signal turned lunar. So the train, once they had the lunar, they normally would move the train and continue to their destination. This train did not move and continued to sit there. And so that's what was raised the flags in the control center, that the train is not answering the radio and the train is not moving on the lunar signal. So they were able to put the signal, return the signal to red to prevent the train from moving further when they asked the rail supervisor to physically walk to the train.
So was there any need at all to contact the individual on the radio? I mean, if they gave him a lunar signal and he moved, would there be no radio conversation?
Right. They didn't need to have a radio conversation, but the when they didn't answer the radio and they didn't move the train, the train just continued to sit there. So they weren't sure what was wrong, if maybe they were having a medical emergency. I mean, you wouldn't know. So they attempted to have a train single track around and honk their horn, but where they were in the tunnel, it was actually blocked by a wall. So there was no opening right there. So we're not sure if the train operator heard the other train honking at them.
Well, I think that's understandable. I just don't understand how you know that you're in a dead spot and you don't have communications unless you get on the radio and continue to try to call the control center and not get through. I mean, I don't know how he knows that he doesn't have radio communication.
So the train operator, they should have moved the train when they got the lunar and speed command. So if they were unsure if they were supposed to move or didn't know if they were having a radio outage, they can't just sit there indefinitely. So if they sit there for a couple minutes and nothing is happening, they would have to try to contact Central on the radio or exit the train to use the ETS phone.
So doesn't the operator need permission from someone to exit the train and use some wayside telephone or something?
No, in emergency, if there's no radio, they can exit the train and use the ETS phone without permission.
Okay, he has to determine that it's an emergency though, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any further questions for Ms. Key Rose?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, seeing none, the next reports are Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0371 through 0376 relate to red signal overruns that occurred both on the main line as well as in the rail yards. There were a total of 42 red signal overruns between January 2021 and April 2025. 41 of those were reported to the WMSC by WMATA in accordance with the program standard. One was discovered during the WMSC's regular oversight activities, which include reviewing Metrorail's Advanced Information Management System, or AIMS, playback and radio recordings. When the WMSC receives reports of red signal overruns from Metrorail, it verifies that an actual red signal overrun event occurred based on recorded information, such as the AIM playback. This prevents any false positive reports of red signal overruns. As I mentioned, we also use our own independent monitoring of various recorded systems, which sometimes results in the WMSC detecting a red signal overrun before Metro Rail is aware, as demonstrated in one of the investigations you will hear about today. This reduces the likelihood of red signal overruns going unreported. The total of 42 red signal overruns for the period January 2021 to April 2025 includes trains and prime movers operating on the main line, as well as in the rail yards. ATO is not used in rail yards or while operating prime movers. Over half of the red signal overruns involved a prime mover or yard operations where ATO is not used. This means these red signal overruns would have not been prevented by ATO being active. 19 of the 42 red signal overruns involve trains operating on the main line. However, there are times trains operating on the main line would not be in ATO, such as single tracking, temporary terminal operations, or operating through an interlocking with a signal failure. Therefore, of the 42 red signal overruns from January of 2021 through April 2025, only 6 would have been prevented by activation of ATO. Moving on to the red signal overrun investigations, we have Whiskey 0371, which had occurred on Sunday, January 21st, 2024. The red signal overrun was reported at New Carrollton Rail Yard at approximately 6:59 a.m. Earlier that morning, a train operator had been assigned by interlocking operator number 1 to operate an 8-car consist designated as train 906 from track 11 into revenue service. However, track 11 was regularly storing 16 cars, exceeding its designed capacity of 14, which caused the lead car to align improperly with signal Delta 99 110. At approximately 6:49 a.m., after conducting a ground walk-around, the train operator began performing a rolling brake test. During this process, the operator passed signal Delta 99 110, which displayed a red aspect, continued over switch 109, and stopped at signal Delta 99 94, also displaying a red aspect. Upon stopping, the train operator reported to the interlocking operator number 2 that they had mistakenly passed the red signal, stating they had not seen it. Following the incident, both the train operator and interlocking operator number 2 were removed from service for post-event toxicology testing in accordance with standard operating procedures. An inspection by automatic train control maintenance personnel found no damage to the switches, allowing normal operations within the New Carrollton Yard to resume at 8:42 a.m. The investigation identified the primary cause of this red signal overrun as the improper practice of routinely storing 16 cars on a track designated to hold only 14 cars, resulting in insufficient clearance behind signal Delta 99 110. In response to this event, corrective actions were taken at the New Carrollton Division, including repositioning the insulator joint to ensure a maximum of 14 cars could be stored at least 10 feet behind signal Delta 99 110. Additionally, tower signage was implemented to clearly remind interlocking operators that track 11 should only hold a maximum of 14 cars to prevent future occurrences of similar incidents. I will pause to see if there's any questions on this event.
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
I see no hands, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Oh,
Quigley,
got one.
proceed.
The Commissioner Conklin has his hand raised.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm
All
sorry.
right, so I was slow on the uptake. To me, in this particular instance, it seemed a little odd to hold this operator accountable for the red signal overrun when that operator wasn't responsible for the overcapacity storage situation. Just a strange turn of events with this one, and it seems like the employee was set up to lose here.
Absolutely. So, other than being taken down for the drug and alcohol test, there was no discipline, enforced on this operator. So, obviously, this, I think that everyone in Metro recognized the issue. The true issue here was the signal placement and storing too many cars in track 11.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Any further questions? Okay, please continue.
All right, Whiskey 0372 occurred on Monday, May 13th, 2024 at approximately 1:18 a.m. when a non-revenue 4-car consist operating in Dulles Yard overran a red signal on yard lead track number 1. Prior to the incident, the Dulles interlocking operator instructed rail vehicle operator number 1 and rail vehicle operator number 2 to move the consist from track 11 to track 1E, 1 Echo, with operator 1 positioned at the operating end and operator 2 at the trailing end. Operator 1 was advised they had a lunar at signal November 99 124 and an absolute block no closer than 10 feet of signal November 99 Gulf 18, which was red. The interlocking operator also noted that another unit was moving ahead of them. Although operator number 1 initially repeated back the wrong signal, they then provided an accurate repeat back, confirming understanding of the movement instructions. However, while moving the train, operator number 1 failed to stop at the designated location and passed the red signal at November 99 Gulf 18. The train continued traveling until operator number 2, located on the trailing end, activated the intercar buzzer to alert operator number 1 that they had passed the red signal. The train came to a stop just short of signal November 99 16. Attempts by the interlocking operator to contact operator number 1 via radio were unsuccessful. The interlocking operator was able to reach operator number 2, who confirmed the train had stopped and was holding at signal November 99 16. Automatic train control maintenance personnel already in the yard for unrelated inspections were dispatched to examine switch 17. Minor damage to the switch was identified and repaired on site. During the investigative interview, operator number 1 stated they were focused on a prime mover operating ahead of them and were unfamiliar with the yard layout and signal placement. Operator 1 admitted they did not see the red signal and could not recall if it was illuminated. Operator 1 also noted that the area was dark at the time. As required by Metro Rail policy, both rail vehicle operators and interlocking operator were removed from service for post-incident toxicology testing. The probable cause of the red signal overrun at Dulles Yard was the lack of situational awareness on the part of rail vehicle operator number 1, which resulted in failure to comply with movement instructions and the passing of signal November 99 Gulf 18 red. Contributing factors included darkness in the area, unfamiliarity with the yard layout, and signal placement. Metro Rail continues to review operator familiarity with yard layouts and reinforce compliance with movement instructions and situational awareness through refresher training and lesson learned briefings. I'll pause for any questions.
Vice Chair has his hand raised.
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We're starting to get into this theme of unfamiliarity with the yard layout. And if we look at the accidents that we're covering today, 4 of them are in the yard, all different, but New Carrollton Yard, Dulles Yard, Brentwood Yard, West Falls Church Yard. Are the individuals that operate trains in these yards, do they always operate in the same yards, or can they on any given day be anywhere on the system?
They have what they call runs, so like a job assignment. So for a certain amount of months, they are they're technically assigned to that yard. Now, if they sign up for overtime, you could work overtime in another division. So you could be in another yard that you're not that familiar with or that you don't often work. So there are possibilities for you to kind of go outside of your comfort zone and work other yards.
So there's really no requirement for an individual to be familiar with the yard or know where the signals are or know the nomenclature before they actually operate in these yards. Is that correct?
It's correct. Not right now, there's not.
And you basically said that Metro's looking at this. Are they considering some type of certification or familiarization with these yards so that we don't continually run into these types of issues?
There have been talks about including the yards in that. So we have a cap currently that's ongoing for the main line, operators being familiar with the main line. And that's kind of progressing. It slowed down a little bit, but we're working through that. So in hopes to the next step of that kind of cap or the territory familiarization would be to include yards and then have other departments that work along the roadway, like track personnel who walk track, have them also required to take these territory familiarization exams.
Well, I think familiarization is very important aspect and something that Metro Rail should seriously consider, because it's we talked about the last accident. Commissioner Conklin pointed out that the guy was set up to fail. I think if you're not familiar with the yard and you're asked to go in and move trains and not know where all the signals are and not know the identification of all the signals, I think you are being set up to fail. And I think that Metro Rail really needs to look at this seriously to see if they can provide some level of familiarization for the people that they're asking to operate under these complex conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any further questions for Mr. Quigley?
No other hands are raised.
Okay, Mr. Quigley, please proceed.
Okay, investigation whiskey 0373 occurred on Thursday, June 6, 2024 at approximately 10:24 a.m. when the train operator of train 433, a 6-car 7000 series consist, reported to the rail traffic controller in the control center that the train had passed signal Charlie 9712, which was displaying a red aspect, while traveling toward King Street, Old Town Station from Van Dorn Street, track number 1. Prior to the event, at approximately 10:03 a.m., automatic train control maintenance personnel began conducting cab signaling system testing in the Charlie 97 train control room. This activity was documented in the control room logbook and authorized by the Button Rail Traffic Controller. During the test, extender boards were used to bypass parts of the signaling system, allowing for a logic override. This setup introduced a misconfiguration that led train 433 to receive a 55-mile-an-hour speed command, an indication that would not have been possible under normal signal conditions when facing a red aspect. The train operator reported that the signal was red, but stated that speed commands were present, which influenced the decision to proceed. CCTV footage showed that after overrunning the red signal at Charlie 9712 signal, the train stopped just short of entering the interlocking. However, after the train operator contacted the control center, the radio rail traffic controller failed to acknowledge the presence of speed commands at the time of the signal overrun and only inquired if the train currently had speed commands, which it no longer did. The radio rail traffic controller then granted a permissive block to continue to King Street Station. The train operator entered stop and proceed mode, moved the train forward, and traversed the interlocking. In doing so, the train ran through switch 1, which was set in the reverse position, causing damage to the switch. The train operator did not stop to verify rail alignment before entering the interlocking and continued operating in passenger service toward downtown Largo Station. At 10:37 a.m., the Advanced Information Management System flagged switch number 1 as out of correspondence. The assistant operations manager was notified, and the rail traffic controller dispatched ATC personnel to investigate. Upon inspection, ATC personnel confirmed that switch 1 had been trailed. They observed a 2-inch gap between the switch point and running rail and identified a crack at the switch point. The ATC supervisor reported the damage and confirmed the occurrence of a red signal overrun. At 12:29 hours, the train operator was located and removed from service for post-incident toxicology testing at Federal Center Station. The train was removed from service at Boston Station for inspection. The switch was repaired and returned to service. The probable cause of the red signal overrun was improper setup and use of extender boards by automatic train control maintenance personnel during cab signal system testing, which allowed a logic override and caused the train to receive improper speed commands. Contributing to the event was the failure of the ATC personnel to follow proper testing procedures, the train operator's failure to verify switch alignment prior to proceeding, and a lack of clear communication between the button and radio rail traffic controllers. The radio RTC also failed to confirm the route status or acknowledge the train operator's report of speed commands at a red signal, which led to the improper issuance of a permissive block through a misaligned switch. Metrorail is reviewing and reinforcing procedures related to cab signaling system testing and retraining ATC personnel to prevent future misconfigurations. Additionally, internal communication protocols between rail traffic controllers are being evaluated to ensure accurate route information is shared in real time during active maintenance or signal-related events. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair Lowby, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Hart. And I know we've discussed this particular incident earlier today, and I'm still a little bit concerned about it. First of all, this operator was presented with both a speed signal, which tells him to proceed, and a red signal, which tells him to stop. So that's a conflict, and that's a false proceed. The operator, the human operator, has the ability to look at the wayside signal and determine whether it's stop or go. But with the automatic train operation and automatic train protection systems, do they look at the speed command and use that as the determination whether to stop or go, or do they look at the wayside signal? Can someone answer that for me?
That they would rely on the speed commands, please.
So basically the speed command was incorrect, and it basically told the operator to proceed at 55 miles per hour, even though it's through a switch which has a limited speed. Is that correct, of 20 miles per hour?
Correct. So this area was, if the signal was lunar, they would have received a 28 mile an hour speed restriction, as it's a turnout. So it's right where the blue line and yellow line meet, down there in near King Street, Old Town. So because there's a diverging route, the speed would be 28 miles an hour. There is a curve there, so the operator received the improper 55 miles an hour, started to accelerate, and as they came around the curve, they saw the red signal and dumped the train.
So to me, this is an important incident, because again, when we're talking about applying automatic train operation, throughout the system, the automatic train operation would have looked at a 55 mile per hour speed signal and tried to proceed at 55 miles per hour, and that to me is a dangerous situation. And I know that this is an issue that happened during testing, but could you review just once more what kind of changes are being put in place to prevent this from ever happening again?
So this absolutely. This cab signal system preventive maintenance or PMI is being done overnight. So they are no longer allowed to conduct this testing during revenue hours. So anytime there is a revenue train out there with customers, ATC personnel are not allowed to conduct this test. Only overnights. So
and what do we consider revenue hours?
5 a.m. through, is it maybe like 1 a.m.?
Okay, so the only time that this type of test can be done is between 1 a.m. and 5 in the morning. Is that correct?
Yes, midnight, between midnight and 4. I mean, like around 4:30, you have some trains that are coming out, getting ready to open the system up. So as soon as they can get all the trains off, different nights, there's different times each night when they can clear the train, all the revenue trains up and put individuals out there to work. So you have a lot of work locations. ATC personnel is now required to establish a work location overnight to conduct this test.
Have they talked at all about changing the test procedure to prevent this type of occurrence? Not just when they do it, but how they do it?
Yeah, I'll pass that one off to Paul Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, they have, like Adam mentioned earlier, they have retrained their technicians on the proper procedure for conducting this testing as well. So this particular incident, the proper procedure was not followed as far as the jumper position on the cards and the switch position of the actual card under test. So they've retrained those ATC mechanics, and then also they walked through this particular incident with a safety stand down to describe exactly how this condition was presented to the train and what the kind of safety implications of that particular test are.
Okay, so it was not just the fact that they did a test, they did an improper test, correct?
The proper procedure for the test was not followed. That's correct, Vice Chair.
And if it had been followed, this incident wouldn't have occurred. Is that correct?
That's correct. They should have removed the jumper and not placed the switch back into normal and put the card back into the rack itself when they were allowing the train to pass their location.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Quigley? That one sounds to me like not only a training issue, but also a process design issue too, that it was not designed adequately so that it could end up in this kind of a misfit so that things could go wrong. Any further questions from the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
And I would actually even ask if Ms. Samarasinga wants to interject anything here at this point.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Only if Commissioner Lobby or the other commissioners are interested in the answer that I think he was asking about in terms of the train operators, the Metro Rail's expectations of what the train operators should be doing when they're confronted with conflicting information like 55 miles per hour, along with a possible signal up ahead that could be and that is red. And I was going to ask Mr. Walker, Bruce Walker, to respond to that question because I sense that was what Commissioner Vice Chair Lobby was asking as well.
Yes, Ms. Summersing. So, Vice Chair Lobby, in the signaling section of the Metro Rail rulebook, there is a rule that states that the train operator is held to the most restrictive command that they see, be it speed command, signal, hand signal, etc. So if they are confronted with a train with speed commands, a 55 and a red signal, the most restrictive command would be the red signal, and the operator should stop at the red signal. So if the operator was an ATO at that point, their responsibility is still to look forward, look out for personnel signal switch alignment as well. So they should have stopped the train. The train operator was in manual. He did stop the train and notified Central Command that he did believe he passed a red signal. So it did operate as designed. There was just other things that happened after the incident where there was miscommunication.
That's good to know. It sounds like there was some redundancy in the process. Hopefully the operators won't be 100% reliant on the technology to keep them out of trouble, because this is a good example of how you need the human element engaged in operating the train, as well as the automatic train operation technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Quigley on this one?
Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
Mr.
not even
Commissioner
sure this
Conklin.
is a legitimate question, but I'll ask, and you can tell me if it's technically not a realistic scenario. How long would this 55-mile-an-hour speed command have persisted? Is this into one signal block? I'm curious about the relationship to automatic train protection in addition to automatic train operation here, and whether that errant signal would have violated multiple blocks, creating this seems like one of the more serious issues I've actually seen in our discussion here, where we had this conflicting issue in a very high speed command. I'm just curious, would that propagate very far into the system, or is it a limited exposure?
That's to that track circuit that they were doing the adjustment or test on. So track circuits are different lengths. I'll let Paul kind of dive into that if he wants, but it would have just been that track circuit that they had the card and the jumper associated and tied into.
Yeah, that's correct. It was just the one track circuit that was under test that was affected by the 55-mile-an-hour speed command. That particular track circuit was J1-503, and it's about 1,300 feet long, leading up to that switch at that location.
And then it would have reverted to the appropriate commands beyond that point. So it's not like it affected multiple miles or segments of track. Okay, thank you.
That's correct, Commissioner Conklin.
Thank you for that
The
question.
train, oh, sorry. No, I was just saying the train lost speed commands after it went past the signal. So it went back that next circuit, dropped the speed command.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conklin. Any other questions for Mr. Quigley?
I see no other hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silva. In that case, Ms. Quiroz, I see the next report is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0374 occurred on Tuesday, July 16th, 2024 at approximately 12:49 p.m. when the train operator of train ID 143 was granted permission by the radio rail traffic controller to allow personnel to exit the train at Brentwood Yard northbound stop. At the time, there were ongoing remote terminal unit, or RTU, outages affecting remote train and signal monitoring system-wide, including in the area between Noma Gaudet and Rhode Island Avenue Brentwood stations. These outages prevented the RTC from receiving visual indications from the affected area. At 12:53 p.m., the train operator reported their location near Brentwood Yard and stated that the train had no speed commands. The RTC, working alone while the other controller was on a break, mistakenly granted a permissive block to the 8-car marker at Rhode Island Avenue station, assuming the train was closer to that point. The operator later clarified that the train was near chain marker Bravo 1 119 plus 00, not yet at the station. When asked if signal Bravo 9916 displayed a lunar aspect, the operator said they were unable to confirm due to the train's position on a curve. Despite this, the RTC gave a permissive block to Bravo 9916, which was displaying a red aspect. At 1:38 p.m., Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission personnel who have been monitoring radio traffic notified the Director of Safety Investigations of a potential red signal overrun. It wasn't until 1:59 p.m. that the event was formally reported to the control center. During a post-event interview, the operator confirmed that Bravo 9916 was red when the train passed it. The RTC instructed all trains at red signals to hold. While the operators sought clarification about a second permissive block to the platform, they were instructed not to move. The train was later removed from service for post-event inspection, which revealed no damage to switches or infrastructure. However, due to the delay in identifying and reporting the event, the operator was no longer on Metro Rail property and did not undergo post-incident toxicology testing. The probable cause of the red signal overrun was the operator's failure to verify the signal Bravo 9916 displayed a lunar aspect before moving the train. Contributing factors included a lack of situational awareness by the operator and the widespread RTU failures that disrupted normal signal and train monitoring process. As a corrective action, WMATA Operations IT has tested and implemented new software to reduce the frequency of RTU outages. However, WMATA has identified the existing RTUs as outdated, and while improvements have been made, they have not yet finalized a system-wide replacement timeline. The operator was placed in non-operational status until they were interviewed by Rail Transportation Division Management. And I can pause if anybody has questions on that one.
Any questions? Thank you for that. Any questions from any of the commissioners?
No hands are raised, Chair.
Okay. In that case, please proceed to the next one.
Thank you. Investigation Whiskey 0375 relates to a series of operational failures involving train ID 419 at downtown Largo Station that resulted in a red signal overrun and unauthorized train movement against the normal flow of traffic. On Friday, August 30th, 2024, at approximately 9:45 p.m., a 6-car 7000 series consist was being double-ended by train operators number 2 and 3 due to an extended interlocking outage at the station that had been ongoing for about a month. The outage prevented trains from switching between tracks, requiring manual coordination and train movements to and from the tail track. Train operator number 1 had properly berthed train 419 at the 8-car marker on track 1 and was relieved by train operator number 2, who assumed control of the train on the lead end. Simultaneously, train operator number 3 boarded the rear cab in preparation to eventually take over operation of the train when needed. Without establishing the required positive radio communication or receiving a permissive block from the Largo terminal supervisor, train operator number 2 initiated stop and proceed mode and began moving the train toward the tail track. The train passed signal Gulf 9826, which was displaying a red aspect, and traveled approximately 238 feet beyond the signal. The Largo terminal supervisor noticed a flashing red indication on the interlocking board and attempted to set a route for train 419, but was unable to do so. After contacting train operator number 2, who incorrectly stated they believed this signal was lunar, the terminal supervisor compounded the error by instructing train operator number 3, located at the rear cab, to move the train back toward the platform, an action taken without proper protection or authorization, directly violating Metrorail policy. The train began to move against the normal flow of traffic. Approximately 1 minute later, the terminal supervisor instructed train operator number 3 to stop the train. At 9:49 p.m., the control center was officially notified of the red signal overrun. The Largo terminal supervisor then requested foul time to investigate the event. A rail transportation supervisor, automatic train control personnel, and senior safety specialists responded to the scene. Train 419 was removed from service for post-incident inspection, which found the train operated as commanded. Both train operator number 2 and the terminal supervisor were relieved of duty and underwent post-incident toxicology testing in accordance with Metrorail procedures. The cause of the event was a lack of situational awareness and failure to adhere to standard communication protocols by train operator number 2, who entered stop and proceed mode and moved the train without the required permissive block. A critical contributing factor was the terminal supervisor's improper directive to move the train in the opposite direction of traffic without the appropriate protections in place. Metrorail has reinforced procedures regarding the requirements for obtaining permissive blocks and positive communication before initiating stop and proceed movements. Additionally, refresher training was administered to operations and supervisory staff to clarify responsibilities during double-end operations and station changeovers, particularly in areas impacted by interlocking outages. And I can pause again if anybody has questions on that one.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key Rose?
Yes, the vice chair has raised his hand.
Yes, Vice Chair Lowry, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. I'm kind of wondering, when you got 3 operators, how can you safely direct the movement of a train? I mean, how do they even refer to the 3 operators? By name, by number? It seems like a communications mess to me to have 3 operators on one train and have a traffic controller trying to direct them.
Yeah, so that is the terminal supervisor's responsibility, and they do manage a lot. They manage the on-time dispatches, and they manage the operators, making sure the right operator is on the correct train. So typically they do refer to them by train number, but if they are double-ended, they might use operator name.
So what do you do when you're triple-ended here?
Well, the reason that 3 operators are mentioned in the report is that the first operator pulled the train in and then exited the train. So really only 2 operators were on the train when the red signal overrun occurred.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
And Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse, please.
Yeah, thanks. I think that wraps up the red signal accents for. I think they were all 2024, right? What was the total that we had for 2024? If you could remind us.
Yeah, I can double check that.
I think it was on the order of like 14 or something like that, but I don't want to.
I believe there were 14 for 2024, 9 for 2023, 14 for 2024, and 6 in the first 4 months of 2025, which would make a rate of 18 per year.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Lobby. I'm just curious because I think this is important, not only for this particular set of accidents, and I do like how we've grouped things by subject matter because it does help kind of focus discussions on that subject matter, and we've hit on a lot of contributing factors today, whether it's training, whether it's radio and comms or automation or whatever. But for me, I do think more attention on this. This is an achievable goal, right? To have 6 already this year. When do we get to 0? And I think that's something we've talked about in the past in terms of objectives and goals. This is a good example of putting together a lot of what we've talked about in different audits and different issues and trying to drive it towards something we want to see. And just personally, I think this is something collectively to work with on WMATA so that we can knock this number down. And I recognize that it's not the same in terms of criticality in terms of yard issues versus mainline, but either way, right? Getting that number to 0 is a very achievable goal, and I think that's something to focus on as we move forward here.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from Ms. Key-Rose?
Yes, Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Conklin, please.
I'm not sure. My question is not exactly about this particular incident. This incident was at a terminal under some special operating conditions, right? So ATO would not have applied here, but in a terminal condition, does ATO resolve many of these communication challenges between a station dispatch manager and train operators? Is that part of the automated process, or are we still going to rely upon manual commands to start and end trips at these terminal locations?
Okay, so you mean when trains are actually leaving the terminals to go in service downtown?
Correct. Is that part of the ATO process that the dispatch command is provided by that system, or is that still a manual set of commands?
That's right. I believe most, and I saw Bruce, I think it was Bruce was coming off, or I don't know if Quigley knows. I believe most of them would start ATO at the terminal.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll just note that in all of the reports we talked about today, human-to-human communications have been a big component of the challenges that have caused a lot of the safety concerns. So I know one of the hopes of the ATO is that it takes some of that communication need out of the equation. So does anybody have any view on whether or not that do we think as a commission that ATO is going to solve some of those problems or reduce the exposure to human error leading to these outcomes? I suspect it does, but I'm just curious what the view of the professionals is.
I will answer the question, Commissioner Conklin. So yes, ATO should reduce the number of overruns when the train is in ATO. So that would be one of the benefits of ATO operation. So in short, yes.
Thank you. So there is likely some safety benefit from getting the system up and running in a broader way, but got to recognize the concerns we talked about earlier in the meeting.
Yeah, and
Yes.
thinking about holistically from January 2021 to the present day, there have been 42 red signal overruns, and out of those 42, many of them have been in either rail yard operations or in single tracking or temporary terminal operations or when
Right.
tracking signal failures happen. None of those conditions will be supported with ATO waiting to prevent a red signal overrun.
No question that there's got to be a continued focus on the human element here and being able to follow the operating rules. But I think earlier you said it was 6 out of 42 would be related to ATO operating type conditions. And that's not insignificant in terms of the reduction percentage in the overall number.
That's right.
I think the holistic answer to your question would be that automation improves safety if it's well designed, but that's a double-edged sword because it's easy to miss some of the potential error traps and create situations that are worse than you were trying to resolve. So it's really, there's not a general answer to that because it really depends on how on the quality of the design.
Yeah, Chair Hart, I appreciate that, and that's why I think the attention on some of the causality of the station overrun is important.
Precisely.
It's not simply the question of whether that in and of itself is a critical safety issue. It's is there a ghost in the machine that might be causing some other concern or some other mode of failure that hasn't manifested itself?
That's exactly centered on our concerns, and that also mirrors concerns that were articulated back in 1999 by the Volpe Center when they wrote a special study on metro rail safety and looked at station overruns and ATO operations. So that's exactly where our concerns lie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Quiros?
No other hands, Chair.
Okay, seeing none, Ms. Quiros, please proceed.
All right, I think we got the last one. The final report before you today, Whiskey 0376, occurred on Saturday, September 28th, 2024 at 7:54 a.m. when train ID 775 overran a red signal while operating in West Falls Church rail yard. The interlocking operator instructed train operator number 1, assigned as a gap train operator, to retrieve train operator number 2 from the administrative roadway at a grade crossing in the yard before holding the train at that location. Train 775 had been granted an absolute block to signal K99-302, which was displaying a red aspect. At approximately 7:48 a.m., train operator number 2 boarded the train as planned. However, after boarding, train operator number 1 resumed movement without further instruction and proceeded past signal Kilo 99-302. The train traveled approximately 430 feet beyond the red signal, trailing switch 303A by nearly 95 feet before stopping. The interlocking operator immediately notified the control center and instructed the train operator to remain stopped. Personnel from various WMATA departments responded to the scene. ATC personnel performed a track inspection and confirmed there was no damage to switches 303 Alpha or 303 Bravo. A walk-around inspection of train 775 was also conducted. There were no reported injuries. In adherence with Metro Rail policy, the rail supervisor removed the train operator number 1 from service for post-incident toxicology testing. Train 775 was removed from service for a post-incident inspection. The probable cause of this event was a failure of train operator number 1 to follow instructions and stop at signal Kilo 99-302. A contributing factor was distraction caused by the boarding of train operator number 2, which likely led to a lapse in situational awareness. The rail vehicle operator was disqualified from operating trains for 18 months and returned to their previous position as a bus operator. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Ms. Quiros, if I may, in the slide that we just had up, we had made a small mistake in noting the date as the 38th of September. Just wanted to make sure that we correct the public record that it was the 28th of September. Thank you.
There are certainly months that I would prefer to have 10 more days in, and September might be one of them.
Thank you for noticing that, and thank you, Ms. Quiros, for those reports. Are there any questions from the commissioners for either the last report or any of the other reports that Ms. Quiros just delivered?
I see no hands raised, Chair.
Okay, in that case, is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented, Whiskey 0368 through Whiskey 0376? Is there a motion to adopt those reports?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Chair Laube, any second?
Second.
Commissioner Conklin, seconded.
Second from Commissioner Conklin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
So Chair, the vote is 5 yeas to 0 nays. So the motion to adopt investigation reports, Whiskey 0368 through Whiskey 0376, passes as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Next item on the agenda, resolutions and other actions. Today we are considering the budget and work program for the fiscal year beginning July 1st. This is our first fiscal year 2026 budget that covers July 2025 through June 30th, July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Is Commissioner Bob still available to help us with this?
No, sir, I believe it will be Kyle, our CFO.
Okay, please, Kyle, if you have any remarks regarding this budget, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The fiscal year 2026 work program and budget before you today totals $7,530,000. It will support our continued success in our safety oversight activities and fiscal management. The largest share of the budget is for salaries and benefits for our staff. This is the conclusion of a months-long process that included development and distribution of the draft work program and budget last fall, review, input and agreement from the jurisdictions, and the process now culminates in today's final approval vote. This budget was completed following all provisions in our funding agreement in coordination with Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. The Finance and Operations Committee reviewed this final budget and work program during their meeting on May 7th, and the committee recommended its approval. Thank you, Chair Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Angie. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Angie?
I see no hands.
Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2026 work program and budget via resolution R-2025-01? Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I see Commissioner Conklin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Rouse. Thank you. Motion and second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
So Chair, the vote is 5 yeas to 0 nays. Resolution R 2025-01 is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address today? Hearing none, that completes our meeting for today. As a reminder, you can always report any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for their ongoing efforts to continuously improve the safety of Metro Rail, and I would like to thank them for their presentations for this meeting. I would also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process as reflected in this meeting. Finally, I would like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. We will hold our next meeting, public meeting, on June 10th, 2025. Is there any further business before the commission today? Hearing no further business,